on, y'all.
Hey everyone, it's Andy Kushner, host of The Wedding Biz, and this is another episode of The Next Level in which my guest co-host and I discuss the most recent interview of the week of who I consider to be an icon or representing the next generation of icons of the weddings and event industry. And together we suss out a few key topics and translate them into some specific tactical strategies, advice for you to consider bringing to your own business to take it to the next level. And before I introduce today's very exciting guest co-host, I want to mention that last week, if you happen to miss it, was Andre Wells of Events by Andre Wells. And Andre's productions have been featured and syndicated across major networks and cited in numerous major print and digital publications. And he works internationally, was named as one of the top 35 event designers in North America by BizBash. And my guest co-host last week to talk about Andre's interview was Sean Lowe, who you've heard many times. And by the way, I want to mention, you all should really consider hiring Sean as a consultant. He's amazing. Like, I don't know if you all know that he does that. Go to his website, thebusinessofbeingcreative.com, and check him out. So I'm so excited to announce that today's guest co-host, I feel like I should have a drum roll, Jennifer, is Jennifer Stein, founder and editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine, which can be found on newsstands in all 50 states and 12 countries. Jennifer also has a wonderful, wonderful daily blog you've got to check out. She speaks at many B2B conferences. And guess what? I am releasing her interview in a week, and it is a must listen. So welcome, Jennifer.
Andy, I so do not deserve that introduction.
I was waiting to say, I knew you were going to do something with this introduction, something.
I'm like, drum roll. Wow, that's, I don't know.
And a crash cymbal, not just the drum roll. No, so welcome, Jennifer. So, and the person whose interview we're going to talk about today is Rishi Patel, CEO of HMR Designs, a premier event design and production firm based out of Chicago. And Rishi has designed events for President Obama and Fortune 500 companies, among many other discerning clients and celebrities alike. And Rishi rose to become CEO with over 100 employees in a relatively short time. So Rishi is really something else. So Jennifer and I are going to talk about it. So Jennifer, I'm thinking the first topic, I know that for both of us, travel is a really big passion. And I loved how Rishi was talking about, well, not necessarily, not quitting cold turkey, that part of it. And let me remind listeners, if they didn't hear it, Rishi was an investment banker for 2.5 years at Goldman Sachs, and he just worked tons of hours. He didn't have time to be creative. So he said that it was like during a recession, he has this great job. He quits cold turkey, buys a one-way ticket, and then traveled Europe, Asia, and India for 2 months. I mean, wasn't that incredible, Jennifer? Like, I loved that.
I kind of loved it too. And to be honest with you, I'm like, when things are bad, like, just travel, because it just completely soothes your soul. It clears your mind. It's like just getting out of your own space and your own head is part of what travel is all about. So when he had that experience, I was like, I'm not surprised at all that he ended up going into such a creative field. Just knowing him personally, I consider him a friend. He's just one of the sweetest people ever. And for him to have experienced what he did, just buying a one-way ticket for 2 months. I mean, who does that? I think that's incredible to even have the ability to do that and to have the...
and the courage, right?
The courage. I was going to say something a little crasser than courage. I was going to say balls, but whatever.
Hey, you could say anything on a podcast, no problem.
Yeah, I think this one doesn't have explicit lyrics, so I'll keep that in my mind. But I mean, the fact that he just took a leap of faith like that and traveled the world is just, I love it. I think it's great.
Well, yeah, and I liked kind of the angle that he talked about it. Like, I remember him saying that I think I asked him, what were one of the big things you learned from this? And he said that what he learned the most was seeing things differently than he had ever really known before, and of course, as a creative, I mean, to me, just to almost step out anywhere, I was thinking about that. Like, I mean, Jennifer, we talked about this. I've said it on the show. I did this trip a couple of years ago to Maui for 5 weeks, and I didn't work. I turned everything off. And I was so moved. I got so grounded, to nature and the planet, which helped me personally. And it opened my mind to get the idea for this podcast, and I actually started another show while I was there. It's a whole nother story. But to get out like that. And then just recently, I know you were just in Italy. I was in LA for some personal stuff and to interview people. And even the 5 days there gave me this different perspective. And I it wasn't like the 5 weeks in Maui, but I was getting a couple epiphanies while I was out there. And like Rishi said, you're just seeing things differently than you're used to. And it was a lot of soul searching and finding inspiration everywhere, as he said.
Well, and I loved how he talked about the fact that he'd traveled with Goldman Sachs, but his experience and what he took away from those travels were very different than doing it with his 2-month jaunt that he had. Because, I mean, personally, when I've traveled with companies that I worked for before, you go to Vegas and it's right. It's all about the food. It's like, well, where are we eating? Where are we partying? But for him, it was more about truly experiencing the culture. I mean, he talks about that a lot and he was inspired by it versus just sightseeing because you've got to, get from one meeting to another and now you have to break for dinner and you've got to find someplace decent to eat. You know what I mean? That's not the way to really experience a culture or a destination. And the fact that he was able and had that freedom to just kind of explore and really, 2 months is long enough that you can really get to see things that you wouldn't if you were just passing through.
Yeah. And I remember, on this show, there's been a good handful of people who, mostly planners, designers, who will take off and travel overseas for, whether it's, 3 weeks or 2 weeks, whatever they can do. And I'm, off the top of my head, I remember David Stark talking about it. I know that Jose Villa brings his camera and gets a lot of personal shots and then actually posts it, and a lot of photographers will do that. I remember hearing that they post their personal stuff and people are getting a different connection to them because they're not only seeing the business side. But the point is, these people who regularly will take off, again, to get that different perspective. And like you say about culture, to experience this different culture and find a lot of inspiration and then work it into, their work that's coming up. So, and, another topic that I know struck both of our attention was how Rishi talked about service, saying that service is really the most important aspect and how he said that service is a luxury. And it's not just the event night itself, but also everything on the way, the whole process, every moment. He wants the client to enjoy working with him and everyone at HMR throughout that process.
Absolutely. And I loved the story he told about that client where he took her into the atelier, his showroom, and how by allowing, because here's the thing, we're all in the service industry, right? So you look at the fact that part of service is creating a relationship, and part of that relationship is knowing that you're being heard and appreciated for what you're saying, right? So he takes her into this showroom and basically by listening to everything she had been saying and then showing her, oh, well, we've got all of these elements to bring into your event. He said it cut out 7 steps of like the, investigative process of trying to determine, if what he's hearing is what she's saying, right? And so he gets to take her through this journey. And for him to say, gosh, I watched her eyes light up, and it really allowed her then to feel heard and appreciated for what she was saying. And I think that's so key to service. It's like, if you don't have a relationship and you really don't take the time to listen and truly understand someone's brand or what they want from an event or those kinds of things, you're kind of missing the mark and could potentially even lose the deal. And I think a lot of what he talks about in the way he services his clients, it just really resonated with me personally, because I'm all about relationships. And I think the genuine authenticity and everything that he kind of brings to the table in working with his clients, he makes them feel important because they are. And I loved that about it.
I want to mention that obviously we all want to get as much publicity as we can for our businesses in the wedding and events industry. Well, would you like help in doing so? OFD Consulting is an award-winning publicity agency specializing in the wedding and events industry. They have placed clients in a ton of popular online and print publications, including many of the most well-known brands. OFD Consulting also has a service dedicated entirely to B2B press. And that's if you want to elevate your brand reputation among peers through online mentions, guest articles, podcasts, and speaking engagements. And if you're a small business who just wants to get a sense of what's possible, check out the OFD Collective. It is a 3-tier membership with strong educational and coaching opportunities, along with ongoing press leads. Learn more by going to ofdconsulting.com. That's ofdconsulting.com. Yeah, and I'm thinking, when you were saying how that woman's eyes had, lit up when this was happening, it really resonates with me. And I experienced this in my own company too. Like relationships are so important. And the service to me starts the moment, that we're talking to somebody, the moment. And, and I find that with anyone who's been on this show, when you hear their story, because I like to ask everybody about their process and, and getting information like this from them, is that just the process of even meeting. Okay, so one example of that in terms of just simply meeting their client the first time is Colin Cowie. Like that one really sticks out to me. It was the first interview with Colin that I did, and he was talking about how he has an intern look at pictures of the client ahead of time, and then they're outside. This is New York City, outside, or maybe LA with his office there too, but they're outside. And so when the client shows up, the intern recognizes them, goes up to them, right, introduces himself. They know a little bit about the client. They bring them up the elevator into the room, and then they get into the room. And I love how Colin has it set up where, he described this glass window and the client's facing so they can see this beautiful office. And then in the office, Colin was talking about, this silver platter that comes out with, I forget, but champagne, wine, whatever, and even macaroons that have the client's initials carved into them. And, the fork is set a certain way and the knife. And immediately, like you were talking about the Rishi, the client's experiencing already, in a sense, the brand of this person. And so just meeting Colin, is an experience in of itself. And almost everyone I've interviewed, then they talk about, again, taking them through the process of getting to know the client and starting to talk about ideas. And so for these people, it becomes an incredible blast. Just that process alone, having nothing to do with the actual night of the event, how that grabs them. So
true. And to be honest with you, when you look at service, one of our editors, she went to a property on a press trip, and they had actually, a lot of times when you're on a press trip, they'll bring you these beautiful in-room amenities. Everything from like chocolate dipped strawberries to, a beautiful bottle of wine or, a local kind of, delicacy or something like that. And one of the times she got back to her room and they had actually printed out a copy of the most recent magazine cover on white chocolate and left it for her in her room. And of course, that level of personalization, it just shows that they really care you're there. And, I think there's just so many brands out there that really just go the extra mile and service to them. And when you look at the luxury client, you really have to wow them. And, for Colin to do all of those things and to be so thoughtful about his process, I think Rishi kind of touches on that, and that they are truly thoughtful, and that, they're not just doing it to, get the job. They really are doing it to, he talks about a little bit, interviewing the client almost to see if they're a fit, right? It's not just about, making sure that, they get the job. It's, are they the right people for us to take the job from? You know what I mean? Which he's very fortunate in that. Not everybody has that ability to pick and choose whoever their clients are. But I think it allows him to kind of weigh and value, who the right fit is so he can make sure he services them.
Yeah. It's interesting. A lot of people on this show talk about that too, about choosing their client as well and not feeling, having, let's say, more of a maybe an assumption of abundance, versus not, and, to assume that you'll get someone else if you feel you're not, right to work together. So I like that point. And I'm also thinking about, you mentioned luxury, especially in the luxury market. These people in the luxury market have seen it all.
No, they have.
Seen, right? They've seen, not only have they perhaps hosted their own events, they've been to a ton of events. They go on a regular basis to these gala fundraisers, and, they just see it all. And so it's really not that price isn't an issue, but it's not, to me, it's so much more than just the money. They are getting an experience is what it's about that in a sense is priceless. And so that's how I view that too, is that those moments, Rishi's talking about every single moment, wants them to enjoy, working with the team. And so to me, that's obviously another way to differentiate yourself is with each of those moments. Every moment is an opportunity. And I'm also thinking for us, it's so much more enjoyable, right, Jennifer? Like you're talking about how it's about relationships for you and for me too. And I remember it was long time ago, when I kind of made the switch, because this is when I was really young, when I would enjoy it, but, I was so concerned about the business and making sure I get it and all of that. And then I had this shift where I really started to just focus, which is the right way to do, but it took me some time, focus on just the moment and thoroughly connecting with somebody. And then I ended up having more fun. And I believe I was far more productive and definitely more successful too.
Well, Andy, that is such a good point. And actually, I took some sales training. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember when it was. It was probably right after I started the magazine, because I was like, I don't know how to sell anything. And one of the things that our sales trainer explained to us is that if you are so invested in getting that signed contract and winning that business, you don't have the opportunity to make the relationship, because you're so focused on the end game that you're not focused on connecting with the client, hearing them, valuing them, really getting to the bottom of what their needs are. And so you miss that entire process. And in the end, you'll lose the sale. So if that's all you're invested in is the sale, you won't even get it.
I love that point. That's really important. Well, we do need to wrap up. It's about all the time we have for today. I do want to thank you, Jennifer, for being on this show. I love this. Listen, I want to have you back again for the next level, for sure. I love doing this together.
Well, you're a whole just bowl of cherries, Andy. Let me tell you, I'm just enjoying myself so much. And thank you truly for having me back on. This is super fun.
Yeah, well, I've never been called a bowl of cherries before, but I'll take it. But I want to thank everyone for listening. Let me give some good information for you all. Rishi's website at HMR Designs is hmrdesigns.com. Social media handles are HMR Designs with Instagram and everything else. And then Rishi has a personal Instagram, which is Rishi the Designer. You all can go to the show notes at theweddingbiz.com to get all of this, or scroll down on your cell phone app. I also want to give the information for Jennifer, our guest co-host, founder and editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine. And before I give this, let me remind you all that I'm releasing her interview next week. And so you just got a good taste of hearing Jennifer. So be sure to tune in next week. Her blog, she has a wonderful blog I want to push here, which is destinationIdo.com/blog. The website is destinationIdo.com. Same thing with all the social media handles, right, Jennifer? It's Destination I Do, right?
Yep,
exactly
that's right.
that. Okay, good. And be sure to go to theweddingbiz.com. And please, if you haven't already, go ahead and like us on Facebook, and also join us on Instagram at Wedding Biz Show, called Wedding Biz Show. And again, next week's release is going to be Jennifer Stein, founder and editor-in-chief of Destination I Do magazine. And so again, everyone, thank you so much for listening. And this is The Wedding Biz.